Thanks for joining us today. We've got your remarketing hit list with your top 10 tips worth repeating. And today we have joining our webinar is 3Q Digital and Hanapin Marketing.
Hello, everyone.
And I'm Cassie O'Median. I'm a senior account manager at Hanapin Marketing and a blogger at PPC Hero. And I'm also joined today with, actually kind of funny what a small world PPC is, but Jay and I actually used to work together a few years back. So it's really exciting that we get to work together again on this webinar, and just goes to show you what a small world PPC really is. So Jay, I don't know if you want to take a quick minute and introduce yourself.
Sure, absolutely. Thanks, Cassie. Yeah, my name is Jay Stamfel. I'm over here at 3Q Digital as a senior client service manager. Like Cassie said, we go way back, so this is really fun for all of us. And yeah, I mean, been in the industry since '07 and been doing search for the last 5 years. So really happy to be here.
Great. All right. So during the webinar today, we ask you to join into the conversation. Get on Twitter, include the hashtag ThinkPPC include that in your Twitter tweets or in the webinar question box to send us any questions. And at the end of the webinar, if we have time, we'll go through and make sure to answer all the questions that you guys have. So cool. So before we get started, we're going to jump into a couple of poll questions just to get some information about the audience. Kind of helps us gauge your experience, and so when we're talking through stuff, we get a better understanding of how long people have been in PPC. So if you take a minute and go through and answer the questions, if you've been in there less than 1 year, 1 to 3 years, 3 to 5 years, or 5+ years. And as Jay mentioned, he's been doing PPC for about 5+ years. Myself, I'm right up there as well. So I think the polls are coming in now, so we're just keeping an eye on those. Now, Jay, have you been an agency the whole time? PPC? I guess you didn't hear me. All right, cool. So it looks like today we have about 37%. It's pretty even split across the board, actually. It looks like we've got about 37% with about 1 to 3 years, 24% less than 1 year, 22% about 5+ years, and about 17% from 3 to 5 years. So really a pretty good split across the board. And that's good because I think the content that we have to cover today, there's some pretty, entry-level stuff, but then we also kind of dive into the deeper, some more advanced stuff too that should be pretty interesting for everyone to follow along with. All right, cool. So we got one more poll question before we get into the good stuff today. So a couple questions to just get some more information about how you manage your accounts. So are you in-house where you manage it yourself? Are you part of a team that manages it? Do you outsource it to account management? Or are you rethinking how my account is managed? Yeah. Cool. So it looks like polls are coming in here. Looks like we've got about 54% of it are in-house people, and about 44% of it are part of a team that manages it, and about 2% outsourced to account management. So again, it looks like a pretty good split between in-house people or people that are part of a team. So it'll be some interesting stuff for today. Cool. All right, so now that we got a couple of the poll questions out of the way, we can start to get into the good stuff. So we've Jay and I were going back and forth, and remarketing is something that's talked about a lot, and the reason for it is it tends to work really well. So we went through and kind of pulled out some of our favorite top 10 tips, and I know Jay, we went back and forth. It actually started out as like probably a top 30 list of tips that.
Right.
Between the two of us, we're coming up with. There's just so many different aspects of remarketing that you can do, from anything from search to display, that it's really just a unique and great tool to help really grow your business. So some of the things that we're going to cover today is starting with funnel segmentation, talking about creative differences using different ad copy based on your funnel segmentation. I'll talk a little bit about frequency capping, also dive into Google Analytics to talk about some of the different rich data lists that are available there. And then Jay will fill us in a little bit on the remarketing list ads for search, which are always a favorite. Then we'll also get into some more kind of advanced and different stuff with dynamic remarketing, YouTube remarketing, look into different layering options through display. And then also looking at, which I think is really important to do, is to determine what the true value of remarketing is. So Jay will kind of walk us through that. And then also looking at a lot of the stuff that we're going to be talking about today is more Google focused, but we'll also mention a few other options for retargeting outside of Google. So got some good stuff to cover for today.
Right, and you know, like Cassie's saying, there's so much actual meat to this topic. So if there's anything that piques your interest that you want to go into more detail, we're absolutely open to continuing the conversation. Our up there, encourage that.
Cool. All right, so a couple things to get into. So I guess before we dive into each of the different tips, I think it's just kind of start a little bit more high level and then start to dive into some more of the deeper stuff here. So some of the things to think about. Look, so why would you do remarketing? Just some fun facts here that 96% of people who visit leave without completing the action the marketers want them to do. And I think that this is continuing to grow, especially as consumers become more savvy and they're kind of shopping around a little bit more. That they're do a lot more research maybe before they actually purchase a product. So people may get somewhere and then come back at a later time and actually convert. And then also points out the fact that 70% of people abandon the shopping cart without completing the purchase. So again, these are just some pretty high numbers here that show that people are you're getting them to the site, they're looking at the thing at your site, getting all the way even to the shopping cart, and just actually aren't purchasing. So retargeting is a great option to capture that those dollars that you've already spent to get that user already to your shopping cart and help them actually convert. So again, just kind of calls out a couple reasons as why it's important to do retargeting. So a couple other things that I think probably for me, I think this is one of the most important things you need to know before you get started. So really understanding your funnel, that really gives you the basis for creating your actual overall remarketing plan. And even before you get into the remarketing plan, I'm going to even take it back a step before that. And I think it's extremely important to make sure that if you're new to remarketing, to make sure that you place your tags right away. That because the remarketing lists don't actually they don't start building until the tags are placed. So that's why it's crucial that you get them placed right away. You can segment the different lists out as you want later, but you really want to make sure that you get those remarketing tags and get them on all the pages within your site right away. So either your AdWords tag, and the AdWords remarketing tag is located in AdWords under your shared libraries. And so you just grab the tag from there and then make sure that you place it on all the pages within your site right away. And then also with Google Analytics, that tag, if you're going to do remarketing, you just need to alter the conversion tag code. And there's it changes it to like a double click parameter that you just need to swap out. And that will allow you to enter into the remarketing list. And I know, Jay, I think we talked about it a little bit before, but I think people have been having some issues, I think, using the Google Analytics remarketing tag. I'm sorry, the new universal tag.
Right. So Google's actually a little bit tricky about this. If you go to the website, and it does seem to indicate that you need the universal tag. It's actually not the case. To actually utilize GA remarketing, you need the classic modified tag, not the universal. The universal tag is coming up within this year, but this is something that they've been saying that for a little bit. I do believe it is going to happen some of the next 2 quarters, though.
Yeah.
Just in general though, all of this is like there's a plethora of resources online that's really does document how to set this up. So, it could like half the battle with remarketing is just having a solid foundation in terms of where you place your tag. Um, so we're not going to necessarily get into it too much, but it really is important. We have to emphasize that.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, that was something that like I know we talked about a little bit before. So just make sure people are aware of it and use the resources that are available online to make sure that you're using the right tags. So as I mentioned, I kind of wanted to take a step back and make sure again that stress the importance of the actual tags. So now that you've got the tags on the page and you're good to go there, it's important to take a step back and make sure that you do the research and really fully understand what your sales funnel is. So you want to understand what's that click to conversion? What's your cookie window? How long is it taking for people to actually click on the ad before they come back and actually purchase? When and it really takes some time and kind of dive into that funnel, look and see what's the revenue like when people are converting within the first day versus people that are maybe visit on day one and then come back and convert maybe even 60 days later. Maybe the revenue's a lot higher at that 60-day mark. It's important to really take the time, do that research to understand kind of the value of where these people are falling in the funnel. Because with remarketing, we have all this information at our disposal. So then what you can do is you create very specific, you know, ads for those users or even specific bidding models for it. Cool. Um, cool. And we kind of talked about it a little bit too. There is just making sure you understand again the full value of the funnel to see where some of these users are maybe more valuable than others. So if you aren't sure how to determine what your click to conversion window is, um, it's pretty. If you go into Google Analytics, you can go to under your e-commerce tab, and then go drill down to time to purchase, and you can look here and you can see kind of gives you an idea of how long it's taking people to purchase. And this is going to change too based on the time of year. Maybe if there's seasonality involved. Um, you may have, I know Jay and I were kind of talking a little bit about it before, is that, he was saying that he mentioned that over the holidays that, or if you're running some sort of promotion, that your click
Right.
to your cookie window, your click to conversion window may be a lot shorter during those times.
I have an e-commerce client, and in Q4 we go from 50% of all conversions occurring on the first day to 75. So this makes sense. This is intuitive. Like when you're buying a Christmas gift or a holiday gift, you have a timeline. You
Yeah.
don't have necessarily as much leeway to think about it. So, when you're setting up your remarketing, you're going to have to, really conceptualize actually, the cadence of how people buy is really going to radically change. Promotions, same thing. So, this is a number that changes. I'm always really interested to like think about how are people buying and how does it change? And this is definitely going to affect how you remarket, how you bid, a whole lot of what you do with digital marketing.
Yeah, for sure. So we just kind of wanted to, call out that if you're not aware of this, or like you meant or you mentioned this, changes quite a bit too throughout the different times of the year, depending on your products, the promotions, or whatever it is that you're offering. So tool that you can use to determine that kind of gives you some insight. Again, is Google Analytics, drilling down into the funnel under your e-commerce and then time to purchase.
And also, for the people who don't have Google Analytics out there, you can see it in your AdWords account as well. So if
Yeah.
you go to conversions and then time lag, it's a little bit hidden, but it is there too. So
Cool. No, that's good to know. Great. So as we talked about, we're kind of going as we're drilling down. Next we're going to start talking about now that we've taken some time, we understand our funnel, we have a little bit more insight to the click to conversion window of our users. When we're creating the list, I think it's important to take some time and create these lists by your membership duration or your cookie window. And what you can do is start building out these lists, right away. And if you can see, maybe you want to create a list for a membership duration of just one day. maybe those are those people that you're running a hot promotion for or something, or someone has a membership duration of 7 days, 14 days. You can go up to like 560 days or something like that. Is the longest window. And so what that membership duration means is basically how long that user is going to stay on your list. So, so if you say just 1 day, then they're only on that list for 1 day. If you have a list for like 560 days, they're going to be on the list for a long time. And if you're remarketing them for 560 days, it might be a little obnoxious, I guess. So it's important when you're doing that you're also using some excluding some of these other lists, and maybe even using frequency capping, as we'll get into later on in the presentation. Cool. So the next thing that I'm going to talk about is we talked about the funnel segmentation by the list. So this is an example of one of the clients, one client that we had, that we segmented the membership duration by the ad group. So we broke it down into a 30-day conversion for non-converters, 60-day non-converters, and 90-day non-converters. And we did this because it just kind of, we understood the funnel. We were getting a lot more conversions within the first 30 days. And those ones were pretty valuable to us. We're bidding a lot more on those ones. But we didn't want to exclude anything that was coming through like 60 or 90 days later. So we set our bid strategy based on that. And as you can see, as we continue to get conversions in past the 90-day mark, and that even though we were getting, as the volume wasn't as high, we were still getting decent CPA or whatever with it. And but we're seeing is that obviously during that first 30-day period, that the conversion rate was actually 125% higher. So we're getting a better conversion rate on the first 30 days, but we're still getting a couple of those coming in 90 days out.
Yeah, and I also think it's like, you're saying that you could change your bid strategy, right?
Mm-hmm.
But also you could change your, what type of creative you show these guys, right? Is that
Absolutely.
something you also play around with?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's also important to, when you're segmenting these out by these days, is that that's, and we kind of talk a little bit about in the actual creative part of it, but that's what the whole importance behind separating out by the membership duration is, customizing that ad copy. So maybe the first 30 days, they're like, hey, come back, buy this product. And 90 days, maybe messaging something like, hey, did you forget about us? Or, somehow, I mean, obviously 90 days is a little bit longer
Right.
for this one, but, it really using that time, the time difference, you can really create specific ad copy to really capture where that user's at in the funnel. And one thing that, so here we've broken out by ad group, but one other thing that you can do when you want to segment your list is maybe even segment them by the campaign level, because then you may have more ability to, you have more campaign settings. You can allocate budget a little bit different. So that might be something else that you can do. Do you do that, Jay? Do you usually segment your funnel segmentation by ad group or campaign?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I mean, I think a lot of it is the types of options you get when you use campaigns is meaningful, being able to set that budget. But then again, you don't also want to create 300,000 campaigns in your account. So, I mean, I think every time you talk about how far should we segment and how far should we break it out, you have to weigh it. If I saw that those 90 days, have 3 conversions, I don't know if that's worth the entire new campaign. But I think the important thing is like, hey, if you you don't want to show the same experience to someone has not visited you in the last 65 days than someone who was there yesterday. But just by breaking it out in general, you're gonna have so much more flexibility and really engaging with that funnel. I mean, I think that's like really what makes remarketing so strong, right? You can really tailor your advertising experience for that individual user.
Absolutely. Cool. So moving on, we're going to talk a little bit more. So we showed how we had segmented the list out by the membership duration. So I just wanted to, maybe some of you that aren't sure how you would actually, how to build these out. So in AdWords, you would create a custom combination list. And so when you created all these lists, segmenting them by the membership duration, because you can't change the membership duration later. So what's important to do is you would create a custom combination, and then you would target so for example, the 90-day list, we're targeting anybody that has visited the site within the last 90 days on this list, but then we also want to make sure that we're excluding the other visitors. So we don't want to, we're going to be removing anybody that was on the 60-day list, anybody who was on the 30-day list, and then also anybody that's converted. So we make sure that we're not showing our ads and wasting money on people that have already, have already converted. So this is kind of just calls out that you're not just, targeting forever, and that you're, continuing to waste money on people that have already come to your site and converted. Cool. So we talked a little bit about it, earlier when we were discussing the segmentation. But again, I think the most important thing about remarketing is being able to create specific ads and that are going to hit your user at the point of the funnel that they're in. So you can really create ad copy that's calling out to them and getting them to take the action that is that you want them to do at that time. And so we discussed a little bit earlier too about promotional ads that you may have a shorter membership duration for these, because Jay used the example that he saw in Q4 how people for the holidays or Christmas, you're on a timeline where you need to buy it by a certain time. So people usually, if there's a promotion, people are going to purchase a lot sooner than later. So maybe creating ad copy that says like limited time only, or sale ends tomorrow, or maybe you have like a coupon code, or like a 15% off or something like that, to include that kind of ad copy in the promotional, and then target it with a shorter membership duration.
Yeah, I think another cool thing is looking at, you have your 30-day, your 60-day, your 90-day, trying to see where conversion rate drops off. If you could say this person is not going to convert anymore because it's been too long, well, maybe that's when you re-engage with the promotion. That way you're not necessarily giving away promotions for people who are pretty likely to convert, but really you're chasing off those people who maybe won't.
Yeah, that's a good point. So some other things that I think is important to call out is when it comes to your ad copy is that it's important to make sure that you're using both your text ads and that you're using image ads, because especially for display, you can run text and image ads, and they perform a lot different. So typically in some of my campaigns, I've seen that the text ads maybe have a higher conversion rate, but the image ads have a higher click-through rate. So, the performance is different, and you just want to make sure that you're having as much coverage as possible. So, in some of the display networks, they may not have all the different image sizes available. So that's where you can get some coverage on the text ad. So it's really, you want to make sure you're covering all of your bases there. So it's important to have both of those. And I also, the way I set mine up when I'm doing my marketing with images versus text is I always make sure that I'm segmenting out out the image ads versus the text ads, because again, they do perform so different, so that way you can make sure that you're optimizing correctly. And if you're not, you don't have to be, some, I don't know, Photoshop whiz or whatever to create some of the image ads that are out there. There are some tools that are available in AdWords that are free that you can actually go ahead and create image ads yourself. So in AdWords, there's the AdWords Display Ad Builder on your Ads tab, and it has some pre-made templates that are already in there, where all you need to do is just go in and customize your messaging. You can upload some images and stuff, so you can go ahead and build out those ads right in there. So I think that's always a useful tool to know that that's available. Obviously, if you're gonna, if you have a consistent messaging, or if you have, someone like a content creator or someone that can create some good content, that's probably your best source to go to. But just want to make sure that you guys are aware that there are some tools out there for free where you can go ahead and build out some ads yourself. All right. So talking about frequency capping. So we've talked a lot about, remarketing and being able to really um, create specific messaging to these users. And it's specifically important because it's remarketing is different than something than just like display targeting just random people on anywhere on the internet. So remarketing is you have a lot smaller audience that you're targeting. So when you're showing your ads, you're showing these ads to these same people over and over again. So it's I think remarketing is frequency capping is one way to kind of help show your get your message across without being totally creepy. So in a sense,
Right.
it's a bit hard to it's frequency capping is some people use it. It's hard to tell what a good frequency cap is for you. I would say that there's not really one setting across the board that I would just say, oh, hey, why don't you just do 3 across the board for everyone? Um, there are some tools, and I'm going to cover them in a minute, that some reports and AdWords that you can pull to help you analyze the reach and frequency that will help determine what's a good frequency cap for you. And I always find this is a really fun image to talk about stalking people
It
on
is.
the internet.
Well, Cassie, have you heard of there's a phenomena in people whose gifts are being spoiled because the remarketing on a shared computer.
Oh yeah, I
So
have
so
heard about that.
yeah, maybe the husband goes in buys a sweater, but then he's remarketed the sweater, the same sweater later, and the wife knows. Um, it's funny seeing these like emerging type of. I mean, you don't want to haunt. I mean, that's a little bit unavoidable, but
Yeah,
you don't want to haunt your customer through the internet. I think in a lot of like social media, you see things like, oh, I visited a site, and then all of a sudden, a million banners every day, and that's the feel you want to try to avoid, right?
yeah, exactly. And I think, and a couple of things that have come out of it, especially like higher end brands, are real particular about, the messaging. The last thing they want to do is come across as like annoying to their users. And I think it was, I don't know, it was like, I can't remember which one it was. It was like Gucci or something, maybe. I can't remember, one of the higher brands or whatever, that they were finding that they were having some issues with some of their ads just showing all the time to some of the same users over and over again. So especially those higher end brands, they a little bit more sensitive to that. So I think doing frequency capping is important.
Absolutely.
So as I mentioned, it's a little still kind of a guesstimate as far as what's a good spot to cap how often your ads are showing to people. So again, um, as I mentioned, there's some tools and AdWords that are available. You can look at underneath your dimensions tab, um, which is always a favorite tab of mine. You can drill down into your reach and frequency report and then segment it by day and take a look. And what it shows you here is, so you look at the day, and then the frequency is the number of times that these unique users have seen your ad throughout the day. So it's important, you can pull in, there's only 4 metrics I think you can pull in the click conversion rate or metrics on here that you can actually pull in. And so you can go ahead and export this, and just kind of gives you some insight to see how your users is your click through rate going up, your conversion rate going up, the more they see your ads or the less they see your ads. So at least gives you some insight to how they're interacting with your ads. So one thing, once you pull this report, you might want to export it into Excel. Maybe pivot the data. So for example, here what we did is we've taken similar report and exported it into Excel, threw it in a pivot table. One of the things to call out is that in that same report, it doesn't pull impressions, so you need to actually calculate your impressions. And so by doing that, you just take the visit, multiply by the number of unique users to calculate the impressions, and then pull that data in pivot table, create your calculated formulas, and then take a look to see kind of where things start to drop off. Where does your click-through rate start to drop off? So here you can see, obviously we have a higher click-through rate, as it's as somebody's seen it like one time or two times and starts to go down a little bit. And then when you're doing this, you can actually in the pivot table you can group it, so you can kind of select a handful of, let's say maybe like 1 through 3, and see if how many conversions you're going to get and what's the click-through rate here. So as you can see, how I had grouped this by like 1 through 3, and then for group 1, and then the rest 4 through 8 visits there to see, and you can see that the sum of conversions, the click-through rate was significantly higher, and the users that have seen the site 1 to 3 times versus maybe 4 to 8 times there. But the conversions did start to pick back up towards the end, so I didn't want to just totally, I think for this one I did set it at 6, just because there were still some conversions that were coming in further on down. But, and like I said, it's a bit of an estimate in general for it, so at least by pulling this report, it kind of gives you a little bit more insight to see where where things start to drop off and where your conversions start to drop off, so you know where to cap it. Do you use frequency capping any years?
It's more of an art than a science, huh, Cassie?
Exactly.
It's very difficult to actually head-to-head test frequency capping, which is like really the core issue.
Yeah.
Even if you see that people are still converting on frequency 8 or and above, well, maybe that's also damaging your brand in a way that you don't necessarily see in the numbers. So you want to be conscious of that. Even if you still see that conversions are coming in, ideally you just want to look. What I normally do is look at CPAs. If it's something that I do see that CPAs are going up with the more frequency, then I'll lower it down a little bit. And this is by lowering frequency, you will save money.
Yep.
While not necessarily giving up your most choice impressions. So that it's also a way to toggle just overall efficiency. So really just look at what your budget is, what's your goals, and how sensitive is your consumer base to being hit with a fair amount of ads. And I think those are the type of options you kind of roll up and then have an answer at the end of the day.
Yeah, exactly. So, like I said, if we go back, it's a little bit more of an art than a science, but just wanted to cover some of the different tools that are available out there to give you some more insight to that, to help make a better educated guess, I guess, in a sense, when it comes to using the frequency cap. Cool. Next we're going to talk a little bit more about Google Analytics lists. So Google Analytics lists are awesome if you're not currently using them in your marketing program. There's so much data that's available through Google Analytics if you have your tag there, and you can really create some pretty interesting lists. So you could segment your list here. If you're tracking revenue, maybe you want to create a list that targets any purchases that have had or high revenue purchases, or possibly you want to create a list that targets organic versus like PPC, or maybe you have specific page views or goals or something that you want to that you have set up in analytics, and you want to create lists that target those users. And another thing that's cool that you can do too is create lists based on maybe your browser or screen resolution. And Bob Ross there creating some happy little remarketing lists. So when to create your marketing list, if you're going to your admin tab in Google Analytics, and you select your profile, and there's several different options that you can do there. For one of our clients, they're targeting kind of an older demographic, and we found that that users that were like 50 plus or something typically used Internet Explorer versus any other browser, and that their screen resolution, they used a specific screen resolution that was a lot larger, a different size than other users. So we were just kind of experimenting around with it to see what different types of lists that you can create. So you can even, like I said, you could drill down to Internet Explorer, a specific screen resolution size, and then target, get a list of people that are on that list. So sky's really the limit when it comes to using Google Analytics and creating some pretty custom lists to target.
I think there's over 250 metrics that you could actually roll into the criteria of how you create lists. which is amazing, right?
Yeah.
When it comes down to like the criteria you have on the other lists, there's nothing to that type of flexibility. So it's like you really could find people in like Omaha, Nebraska, who are a certain like just really go so precise into like the actions they did on your website, what they did after that, what type of web page do you show the ad in. If we want to talk about high resolution, highly focused, laser targeting, there's really nothing better. And we could talk the entire hour just on how to create lists within Google Analytics.
Yeah. This is as I mentioned earlier when Jay and I were discussing kind of what was our going to be our top hit list ones. There was a lot that were on there, and a lot of them were Google Analytics. I do feel like we could go on and on all day about it. So I will remind you though that if you do create a list in Google Analytics and you name it, you cannot rename it. Just so you know. So careful what you name your marketing list. Cool. All right. So we're back to some poll questions. So a couple things here, just kind of help gauge a little bit. So where do you guys stand on retargeting? You yet to really dive in, tried it out, but need to work on your best practices. I've seen it work. Would like to use it in other channels. What about you, Jay? Do you use any other types of retargeting besides Google or Google Analytics?
Yeah, we do go into some of the programmatic display networks. I think one of the things you have to, think about when you talk about going through maybe an ad roll or a medium ad, some of these DSPs, is that a lot of the inventory through that display is also bought through the GDN network. So, I think if you like really maximize remarketing through Google, it's definitely a viable option. But there's just so much to do within Google. Um, I would say like there's almost always like room to grow.
Yep, I agree. And we'll talk a little bit at the end about some of the different other options that are out there. So it looks like the polls are in. Looks like about 40% of the people have tried it out, but need to work on some best practices, which is cool because again, we're covering a lot of those best practices today. And then we've got 38% haven't really quite dove in yet. So again, we've got giving you some tips here as things to keep in mind when you do choose to get into remarketing. And then about 21% that have seen it work but would like to use some other channels. Cool. All right, I'm gonna pass it over to Jay here.
All right.
All right, 1 second. All right,
Cool. So, guys, I'm going to start talking about remarketing lists for search ads. So, a lot of what we talk about remarketing is display, but you are able to use the lists and audiences you build um, in actual search. So one thing, Cassie was talking about the GA tag. For RLSA, we're going to have to use the AdWords tag. So that's a little bit of a distinction. It's not compatible yet. Um, but this is something that is just really, really powerful in general because we're able to combine the intent of search with the type of really specific user information that audiences could bring us. I want to direct you some numbers right here. Account wide, this is for Q4. We spent around 1.2 million. Of that, obviously we're talking about a relatively small percentage are people who either purchased or visited in the last 90 days. But so the first takeaway is scale is significantly smaller. This is just, and this is a campaign structure in which we had a regular search accounts, we threw up some audiences on it, and we just changed the bidding a little bit, right? So this is not broken out campaigns. This is just utilizing the enhanced campaigns modifier. So it's something that's really easy to do, but does limit you in some of the options you have. The big takeaway is if you look at the efficiency, it's wow. It's so even just like as low, just knowing that someone has visited your site in the last 90 days has an amazing like uptick in overall ROAS. So, okay, number one, scale is low comparatively. Number two, ROAS is great. So what does that lead us? Let's go to the next slide. Well, let's go ahead and expand it. So what I like to do is for people who have visited my site before, I actually break them out into their own campaigns. And the reason I do that is because we're buying keywords regularly in your regular campaigns. Sometimes you're going to say, hey, maybe I'm not going to buy a competitor term because the return is really poor. But if you knew that someone visited your site, maybe you would buy that competitor term. Maybe you utilize broad modification throughout your site, not true broad. Well, if they visited your site before, if they completed a certain action, or they abandoned a shopping cart, maybe that's something you would want to do broad on. So this is something that, like, once you do break out your campaigns, you are really able to really customize and how much you want to go after and expand that. I know people who actually do dictionary bidding. So they just take random words and they say, if you abandoned a shopping cart 7 days ago, I'm going to bid, and you're looking on Aardvark or something, I will show you an ad because you're that relevant. I don't know, I've never actually personally done that, but I think it is a cool idea. DSAs, I haven't had a lot of luck, but if you throw an audience on DSAs, actually, it really does find some relevant traffic. So, just really want to open that up.
Yeah, I've seen some good success with it. Just some of the more general broad terms that we wouldn't be able to maybe afford, I guess, to bid on in just traditional search campaigns. Being able to bid on them through the search remarketing has been great for us.
Very powerful. But that being said, because we actually can tell what people are doing. So, for example, the same list on different types of campaigns will have very different results. Even the same query, not with different audiences, will be different as well. In this example, we have people who have converted searching on brand largely as a navigational query, right? These are people who are just trying to actually go back to the website, but not necessarily purchase. Where if you look at non-brand, people who are like a little bit more generic, not necessarily as close to your website, that actually is more informational, transactional. So I think it's like you always have, with RLSA, you are going to see very different behavior. Cassie, do you have like certain methodologies for splitting up these different types of clicks?
I haven't tried it yet by splitting it up, but I think that makes a lot of sense to break it up by just where they're at as far as informational and navigational. I think overall it seems like a great strategy. So even myself, I'm coming up with pulling out some good ideas here.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think the name of the game is you have to be conscious of what is your user trying to do, and what do you know about them, and you're going to find that actually, like, the diversity of consumer behavior gets pretty rich. So I think it's pretty interesting all in all.
Yeah.
Cool. So I mean that's the 30-second RLSA, and I'm just looking at the time here. We are going to have to be pretty quick. We have to we're coming up on the hour, but there's so much to talk about. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about just the meat and potatoes of marketing and retargeting. We're talking about GDN. We're talking about different ways. You have your tag and the type of information you have on your consumer. And you have all of the regular types of ways you could create a display campaign in Google. And what I really want to emphasize here is the ability you could take these targeting methods and really have a synergetic effect.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's pretty interesting how they all layer in like that.
So before we really break into that, a pretty interesting fact is once you create your audience list in AdWords, if you click on that, you could actually see the demographics of the people who are in your list. Really interesting. Oftentimes it's not necessarily actionable. You would do the same things anyways, but I always find it's good to take that data and loop it back to product. Any time you do have information of how a certain percentage of people who, let's say, abandon a shopping cart and how they look like, is going to be something that's valuable. So like, I really want to emphasize is, to really maximize retargeting, you need to take that information that it gives you and use it back in your campaign. And I think that's what we're going to talk about next slide. Right. So let's say you have your display campaign targeted towards shopping cart abandoners. If you go ahead and so that's going to be targeted and bid. So it's only when people have met the criteria of the list, and that's where most people stop. And they say, great.
Yeah.
But what you could also do is add additional targeting, let's say topics, as bid only. And then when something is both on a topic and a remarketing slide, you're going to be able to collect data on that topic. So it's really something that does not change how your campaign acts. It changes how your campaign gathers data. So it's one of those things that's just like really good practice to do. It's free information, and everyone knows that knowledge is power.
Yeah, no, I think this is a great strategy, and you and I kind of talked about it before early on, and this isn't something that we are currently doing, and I think it's a great way to just pull more data about your users and where they're visiting and stuff, and being able to apply that in other campaigns too.
Absolutely. So I think on the next slide I have so just to prove a point, I added all 2,200 topics to my one little remarketing ad group to prove, just to say, hey, you could do this, and throughout time you do see that there's like certain correlations that arise. For example, I was for a client, I was selling bags, and what we found out is that when people were related to consumer electronics, we had a much higher conversion rate, statistically aberrant. Pretty strange, but it actually kind of made sense. It means that when people buy a new laptop, sometimes they want to buy a new bag to protect that laptop. When you add these topics on, you get to see those connections that maybe you didn't necessarily think about. And then you could bid accordingly. So it's like one of those, it's just really valuable, and I've had a lot of success with it. Really want to try to emphasize giving it a shot. Cool. So dynamic remarketing, one of those things that we could talk about all presentation long.
Yeah.
It's a little bit, has a heavier barrier to entry as well. So you do need a merchant feed, and you need to have that merchant feed linked and updated. So this is something that if you're doing e-commerce, you probably are already doing because of the importance of Google Shopping and PLAs and that type of thing. What you're going to do is modify your marketing tag to include 3 parameters. It's like, what type of page is it on, what's the product ID, and that correlates to your merchant feed, and what's the overall value of it. What's going to end up happening is Google is going to make the connection between your feed, what people actually saw on your site, and then show an ad about those products. Very interesting in the sense that, let's say you're a huge retailer, you have 600,000 individual products. There's no way you're ever going to have that many banner ads. There's just no way. But through this process, you can actually show a very product-specific banner without having through all the mess of creating it and segmenting it. So it's something that that alone really is something that's pretty powerful. In terms of just overall numbers, I have a little bit on the right. You could see those, but performance really did pick up compared to regular remarketing. So if you are in the e-tail space, I really do want to try to encourage you to try this out. It's something that we've had a lot of success with, and I think that in general is a direction that Google is only going to trend more in. And I mentioned a little bit about the creative generation. There's actually there's a lot of different ways to customize it. You could go ahead and have upload templates. You could change colors, change the amount of product shown, things like that. But there's also a setting where you can say, hey, Google, take whatever, iterate through the different variables and find out a layout that is actually performs the best, which I think is great, and I've actually had a lot of success with. So it's like it really does answer this problem of, well, creative generation is always going to be an issue, and this is a pretty good answer. One thing I do want to mention is that, let's say someone like goes to your website and sees 50 different products. When an ad is shown to that person, you don't necessarily know what type of products were shown, right? So one of the drawbacks, like when you do give up that type of control, you know, when you do automate the banner, you do lose a little bit of transparency.
Yeah.
You can like do things like edit based on product IDs. There's a lot of little tricks, but that's still going to be an issue. For the advanced marketer who's already doing this, you have your three parameters that you had to add to your tag. We know there's actually a lot of other parameters that you can include. You come down to demographic information. You could import custom quality score, which I've seen some success with. And one thing that's particularly cool is recommended product IDs. So, if someone buys a waffle from your website, you could say, hey, maybe they should see maple syrup alongside with it. Pretty cool. You could get really nitty gritty. I think I'm just saying, this is really a deep product if you want to do it.
What are those waffle breakfast tacos or something you're talking about?
Yet to try it, but I'll put it on my list. Very quickly, I'm going to touch on YouTube remarketing. This is something that is pretty. If you have a YouTube channel, it's very easy to link your account. You just have to have a sign over, and it's all native integration, so there's no tags to be placed, anything like that. Ultimately, there's two ways to do it. Once you link your account, you're going to be able to advertise in display on people who have interacted with your YouTube account. So, for example, if let's say you sell farm equipment and someone on their own volition went out and watched a 10-minute video about farm equipment, and I'm going to say that's someone I want to put a banner in front of. That's a pretty highly qualified audience.
Yeah.
I'm real happy doing that. So and there's a lot of different criteria. People who've watched certain ads, people who've shared content, liked, engaged with it. So all that type of information you could go and have in your AdWords and advertise it just like any other remarketing campaign. So that's the first step. And the second step would be the actual YouTube part. So you could take your existing remarketing ads in AdWords, let's say your shopping cart abandoners, your people who viewed product pages or category pages, and you could show them ads. So if this is something that like you have a user that's maybe on the fence, something like that, you could go ahead and show them and really help them along the funnel. So there's two different ways to think about YouTube, and both of them are good. And I think it's something that if you do have a YouTube channel, something you really should be doing. We've been very positive about remarketing. I think there's so much you could do, but there are some things to take into account. For example, we have all this ability to segment and go ahead and create like all the different lists that you might want to, but you don't necessarily want to do that, right? Because if you do have 350 different campaigns, you're not necessarily going to have the same sort of efficacy for every single one. So I think every time you do make a list, you want to take into account that this is something that could work, could drive a lot of conversions, or maybe actually is nice, is interesting, but doesn't really change your bottom line. So I think that's something that you have to definitely be conscious of. In terms of, some of the numbers we showed with RLSA are just really, really positive. We're seeing RLSs that are 5 times higher than account average. And that may seem like something, hey, we should just really push those audiences as hard as we possibly can. But I would actually say you want to be a little bit more analytical than that. So on one hand, a lot of these people are going to already purchase, right? And another thing is that when you actually do come down to the the actual auction dynamics, it's something that you could see actually does not have as much profit as you could think.
Yeah.
So in this example, the control has regular bids, while the RLSA has a little bit higher CPCs. So really, it's a classic example of efficiency for scale. And if you go to the next slide, what we do is we break down how much of that efficiency is really worth it. And if you actually do the math, and if your goal is pure profit, then we do see that in general, it does actually work out to be more valuable. So, I mean, I think in general, be conscious of, what are the actual numbers behind it, and what are you getting out of this type of bidding?
Yeah, I think that's really important. Is we talk a lot about it, and I think just we like to test things, try see how things work sometimes. But I really think it's important to go back and really take some time, every once in a while to make sure that does it make sense? Are you getting the most revenue from this channel, from these lists, like you said, and see if it's working. For the most part, from most of the campaigns that I've been running, it's been great. But I still think it's important to always go back and really see what is the value that you're getting from it.
Absolutely, and I think for the most part, you are going to find that it is very successful. It's just, you have to be wary and always just be checking your back-end numbers and your analytics.
Yeah, exactly. So we're getting here close to the end. So this is, I think, one of our last few slides we have here is when we talk about, we mentioned retargeting beyond Google. And just, as I said, we talked a lot about AdWords, a lot about Google Analytics and some of the other features that are available. But there's also some other things that you can do. There's Twitter promoted tweets. You can do some retargeting there. Facebook Exchange ran some campaigns that have been really effective. AdWords is also another platform that you can use. It does link in with Google, but there are some other channels as well. We mentioned Criteo, Remarketer, Avlay. Those are a couple other ones that we've used throughout the agency. I'm sure there's a million other that are out there that I'm not mentioning. So I apologize if I'm not meaning to exclude anyone, but for the sake of time, we only could call out a few. But just wanted to make sure that you guys out there are aware that there are other options out there beyond Google. Great. So we have our last poll question for today, which is, would you like help with your PPC accounts and management? So if you want to take a minute and answer the poll question here below. We have a free account assessment from Hanapin, or we have a free mini audit and analysis of your AdWords account health from 3Q Digital. Either, or if you're not interested, or maybe you're interested in both. So if you take a minute to answer that, that would be great. I don't know if we're going to have time for questions. Maybe if we have one question. Let me see if we get some time here. Okay, so let's see. So I guess we mentioned actually someone wanted to know what is RLSA. We kind of dug into like the more technical part of it. So maybe we need to back it up a minute and talk about what is actually remarketing RLSA. So I don't know, Jay, if you want to give a quick explanation on that.
Absolutely. So what it is you have your AdWords campaign with search, you have your keywords, things like that. What RLSA is taking that regular search and then superimposing an additional layer of logic where you say, if someone has met a criteria through your remarketing list, then we're going to either bid differently, have a different keyword, have a different ad copy. Pretty much what it's doing is changing the user experience using remarketing lists for just search.
Yep, yeah, I know it's a great new feature that's available, and as Jay's pointed out, and we've had great success with it too. So, all right, well, I appreciate everyone joining us today, and it was great to catch up with you again too, Jay. It's always good to catch up, and it's fun when
it's been fun, Cassie.
So take care, and everyone have a great day.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.